wargame anytime.
Well, hello everyone. It is another episode of Any War Game Anytime. It's Daniel here with Sam, and we've got a special guest. But before that, Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Another day in beautiful Austin, Texas, and if only the weather could stay this nice and cool forever.
Mm.
Sadly, we as everyone who lives here knows, those months are ending shortly, and we will be back to the blistering hellscape that is our normal temperature.
Mm. Boz is out as well, trying to take care of real life stuff, but he'll be back on soon. We've been in contact with him, so just part of life. That is what it is. As we say, we can't do this full time, not yet. So Boz is hunting down that he's hunting down that millionaire. So, but on to better things. Our special guest tonight, Alan, from Heart of Texas Wargamers. Man, it's really great to have you on. How you doing, Alan?
Hey, Dan, Sam, it's great to be here. Thanks, guys, for inviting me on.
Oh, absolutely. So so this okay, so let's there's a lot. So okay, so Alan, go ahead and just give us a little bit about your history in wargaming. And yeah, so let's just sort of start from there, and then we can just there's so much I'm always saying there's so much to talk about, but yeah, so go ahead and just tell us a little bit about your history in wargaming.
Well, I don't know how old Sam is. I know I'm a lot older than you, Dan, but do you guys remember the old plastic army men that used to come like 100 in a set that you used to get at for like, $1?
I remember that.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah, yeah.
my,
Played with them. I had
I,
some in my yeah, I had some in my house.
I maybe I'm a little bit younger than Dan, but I when we when we
Oh,
when those were like the kind of budget toys that you could have I
Right.
could have my parents could afford. We grew up growing up
yeah.
with very little.
All right. So, um, I, I grew up in the 60s. So this is tell you 1960s. Okay. So anyway,
Oh yeah.
uh, all right. So, my father was full-time military and everything else. And one of my earliest memories of us as kids, me and my brother and my dad would sit on the floor and play Army Men, where we would take those Army Men that came out and they had like sets. They weren't all just green, they had green and gray. So they had actually ones with Germans and old German helmets. And we would sit on the floor and put out barbed wires and trees and use marbles to shoot across.
Oh
And
wow.
if you hit a piece of terrain, you remove the terrain.
Ah.
And then, you started knocking over as you knocked over each figure, you had to shoot your marble well to be able to knock over the figure and then try to figure out, who won the battle that day. Now that expanded as we kept those army men to where we added air power, which was a stack of dominoes that we could fit in our hand and use a bombing run
Oh
that
geez.
we'd run over the other side and just drop them out of our hand as a bombing run. So that's where this all started in the 1960s. We went on as I moved into like later grade school, middle school. You remember, and the battleship game is still out there.
Uh-huh.
But what you may not remember is there used to be a paper version of Battleship that had both land and sea targets.
Mhm.
In addition, you also had aircraft that could be over land and sea. So, in other words, they could, as you drew your map, they could be over either. And as a family, we would sit down and draw out these maps. Okay, yes, my father was he was an airborne ranger
Your
and
father is
everything else. So,
awesome. Sounds awesome.
oh yeah, so there was a lot of that and stuff. And obviously, he taught me chess and everything else. Then eventually, I went in the Navy. Uh, thank the gods, in the 1970s, AD&D and Avalon Hill came out. Loved that. And that was pretty much me, is RPG in Avalon Hill until 1983. I went to Origins in Baltimore, and I was playing D&D. It was great, it was fun, whatever. We had a break. So I wandered around the convention, and I walked into a room, and there was all this beautiful tabletop terrain and all these beautifully painted miniatures, and I'm saying, how do I do this? This is really cool. And so from there, I started playing Ancients on the East Coast. I ran some of the first DBA, De Bellis Antiquitatis tourneys on the East Coast in the 80s and 90s. Then I took a long hiatus from gaming, and then came back to gaming and running games and conventions here in Texas since 2016. So that's it all in a nutshell.
Wow, that is so cool that you really were involved in gaming in like some of the real early stages. I got into gaming in sort of the mid 90s, I think, and just walking up to
Okay.
a game store. So, but yeah, you've really saw this stuff come out, even just D&D, sort of come from its beginnings. So you're talking about like you mentioned you've played a lot, you've running some games here and there. What games are you playing right now? What games are you interested in right now?
Hey, I want to try to shrink it down to the list of the games that I normally play, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, Daily, I play World of Warships online, so it's an online game. So I like that because it's quick, easy, typically 5 to 10 minutes, and either I've won or I'm done and I'm out. So
Yeah.
I can do whatever. But tabletop gaming. So this is what I'm doing a lot of right now. I'm doing Pike a Shot from Warlord Games, and I do that in 28 millimeter. I do Altar of Freedom in 6 millimeter, which is American Civil War, and that's by Greg Wigman. I do To the Strongest, which is an ancient set of rules by Simon Miller. Net Epic Armageddon, which is a fan-based rule set, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about a little more later because that's
Oh
how
yeah,
Dan and
love
I
that.
met. Canvas Eagles, which is a free World War One aircraft game from Blue Max. It's a fan-based game. If you look up bluemax.com or something like that, you can find those rules for free. Rommel, which is a core level World War II game by Sam Mustafa. Valor and Fortitude, which is I play in 15 millimeter. It's a Napoleonics war game by the Perry brothers and
Yeah, yeah.
Steve Jarvis. And my absolute favorite set of rules that I'm playing right now, trust me, there are plenty other rules that I play, but the absolute favorite that I play is Blucher, which is I play in 6 millimeter. It's a Napoleonic war game by Sam Mustafa, and you are not playing captains, majors, colonels, or just generals. You are field marshals or the actual emperor or the czar or anything else. It's a fantastic set of rules at that scale of game. I love that game.
And what scale of game is that again? That one's
I
the
I play that in 6 millimeter, but the
6 miller.
scale
Yeah.
is the smallest unit is a brigade. So the smallest unit you're looking at that's sitting on the field is probably about 2,000 men.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. I mean, like, and that is, I think that um I don't play as many games as you, but I'm sort of similar than you that is that like I've never considered myself to have like I'm only going to play this one game. I'm only going to like I love bouncing around. I love I love playing different things. And I know we're going to talk about Net Epic, but I remember some of the old guys at my store, who played a lot of the games that you played. And I would bring up my 40K or Fantasy or War Machine, but I couldn't help but seeing these games that were just so cool. And especially 6 mil. Like um I've always loved the look of 6 mil, and it was really great. So we met where because you run I guess it's once a month, right? You run a Epic Armageddon event at a game store where you just bring up these awesome models and these models, and you just play. And if anyone happens to need an army, you just let them play. Um, but like your philosophy on gaming to me sort of epitomizes what we're interested in on this podcast, which is that like it's any war game. You don't have to be kind of tied down to one war game. You can,
No, 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 you
yeah,
don't.
yeah. Um, which is sometimes I think I get it that people have their favorites, but I think that Sam, I mean, Sam, would you say this is definitely where he's definitely going where the wargaming is good, huh?
Yeah, and it's part of our motivation in doing this podcast was to kind of show people that there are other things out there. If you've just kind of played GW games or only certain things, we can. There's a lot of stuff out there, and there are communities for those things that you can find. And we kind of wanted to show that and just talk about it because it's fascinating to all of us. And
Mhm.
I mean, there really is just our I think my core ethos is I just love to see a bunch of models on the table, and I want to watch the battles, and you kind of have this cinematic this movie unfolding on the battle on the table almost, and it's something that no other form of entertainment really captures for me.
I think Sam hit it right on the head there is the cinematic part of tabletop gaming. You get to, it's not just something, it's not, while I love board games, and I play like Panzer Blitz and a bunch of other Avalon Hill stuff. Uh, Being able to see this in a 3D format is just fan. I mean, it takes your imagination and focuses on on what you're seeing in front of you. Like, yes, okay, now I understand.
Yeah, and if you've got the creativity too, like you can kind of look, when you look at you can look back in historical battles, like, oh, how did they make such a terrible mistake? I was like, well, maybe and you can, well, the dice sometimes fate just kind of goes awry in the middle of a battlefield,
Oh,
and
oh yes.
that is a part of a part of combat and has been for forever, the fog of war, right? I mean, things
Oh
kind of
yeah.
just things just sometimes happen in the chaos of battle, and
But it's yeah.
sometimes it looks like strategic genius, and sometimes it looks like a buffoonery, and sometimes it's neither or both. I mean,
But when you can
Oh yes.
overcome, like, aren't those the best games when you have that bad roll and you're just so but somehow you manage to do something else and like still pull out a win. Like, we all complain about our bad rolls, but I mean, when you can overcome that, and then I think that's what makes the roll so great. Like, I love chess, but to be able to have that random element if it's just the right amount, it really can make you think a lot differently. Like I said, the on the, just being, what's the word, on the fly. Um,
Right, right. So Dan, think all right, you mentioned chess as
yeah,
well. So imagine in chess that all of a sudden your queen changes sides.
yeah.
Okay. People go, well, that didn't. No, it did happen. Throughout historical battles, that actually happened. During battles, troops would sometimes change sides. And while it may not make a gigantic tactical change, it made a major strategic change in how you view your forces, how the commanders worked, everybody local even worked with them. The English Civil War was rife with either commanders or units changing sides. And you're like, um, excuse me, what? Uh, what do you mean? Yes, I'm for king or I'm for the parliament. And now either the commander or the company has to decide, well, are we going to join him, them, or are we going to try to shoot him or them?
And both happened.
And both happened. Absolutely both happened. And that's I think that's one of the wonderful things about our hobby is that, especially if you play the historical stuff, you find that things that you are in your sci-fi or fantasy that you think, oh, that would never happen. Oh no, my friend, that happened in real life. Your friend turned against you. This guy who absolutely knew was your sworn friend has said, nope, my skin is worth more than yours, and you're going down.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
there's
like,
there's a real terror to combat that I think people tend to underestimate when they just kind of see things in the abstract or afar. But the reality is if for soldiers on the battlefield at pretty much any point in history, especially at earlier points than modern warfare, there are reasons why we don't need to get into. It really is. It's a huge psychological strain to fight in a battle,
Oh
and
yes.
and so it makes when you see kind of how forces were organized, how armies were organized, how decisions were made, you have to always kind of keep in mind that it's really not easy to actually get people to march in a line and hack at each other. Where human beings are not like, contrary to what you might what you might say, human beings are really not naturally inclined to do that. Outside of crazy people, it's actually takes a lot of either discipline or prodding or whatnot to get people to do that. And when you kind of understand the morale aspect of combat, it really does kind of contextualize a lot of history, and kind of what you're trying to capture in wargaming by kind of abstracting that out. Is it makes more sense why you have the random elements and why you kind of need those, because war isn't chess.
yeah.
And it's not like I'm going to move these people here and it's going to be a sacrifice play here. Well, okay, well, turns out that actual soldiers don't
Yeah.
go along with being sent to on suicide missions. So you have to kind of plan around that, and you have to think about that. And and by and large, commanders don't want to just willy-nilly send people to their death. There's a human element in all of this.
Right.
So, and so, man, we could this. Okay, there's so like we're gonna have you back on. Let's just because there's
Hey, I'm good for
yeah,
that.
exactly. Okay, but so we're just but let's talk about specifically just for this. Okay, let's talk about Heart of Texas Wargamers. So and maybe tell us about that. And then there's also Dead Wargamer Society. These are some Facebook groups. So tell us a little bit about these groups. I know you're one of I believe the admins over at Heart. You're one of the guys that sort of help coordinate it. So tell us a little bit about these groups.
Okay, so the Heart of Texas Wargamers was founded by me in December of 2020. Yep, right in the middle of the pandemic. What a great time to start a wargaming club, But I did it with the intention that there were some war game stores in and around where we were, but it was hard to coordinate when games were happening. And that was the whole reason for the Heart of Texas Wargamers. We basically focus on the Killeen, Temple, Waco area, trying to coordinate gamers, play games of all genres. We're not just historicals. And we play in boatloads of different scales. We play, there are folks who play Napoleonics in 6 and 15 and 28 millimeter, pike and shot in 28 millimeter, in the 12.5 millimeter or 6 millimeter. We also contact local game stores. Right now, there are 3 operating in our area, and we try to set up games there with them. We leave our cards, but it's mostly about trying to get gamers together to be able to game. And currently, we're at 332 members, I think. Now, a lot of those are not in the area. These are folks who have heard of us, affiliated with us, maybe here in Texas. If you're a gamer in Texas, you know it's not about I live next door to you. It's about how many hours is it so we can
Yeah.
I can get together and go play. So
Well,
that's yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Well, and it's sort of we said something similar when we had Chris off from Kings of War that sometimes wargaming is all about we think the important people in wargaming are like this executive or this person who runs this company or I don't know this designer, but really the heart, like what keeps wargaming alive is the organizers. I mean, it's people um who just, like I said, they coordinate, they've got Facebook pages or maybe a Discord, and they are the people who are still just, hey, what's going on? Can you make this? And like that is a lot of work. And so like people like yourself, Alan, we always like to bring people like yourself on because you're really the unsung heroes of wargaming, and that these coordinators who just, take the time, and it takes time to organize things and meet people. And you said, I met you because you set an event for Net Epic Armageddon, which we'll talk about. But it's like you got me into the game just by coming here, taking the time out of yours and saying, look, here's this, and like, bam, now I played my first game a couple weeks ago, thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll talk about it, but I actually it's very maybe it's a sign, but the day of this interview, I got in. I got in some 40-year-old Phantom Eldar Titans. So, but it really is like you
I
organize.
hate facing those things, by the way. Those are just such a pain to try and kill.
But I guess I would say it this way. Maybe it's not a question, but we definitely want to say thank you, you and other unsung organizers who take their time and keep this hobby and bring people in. So,
Well,
definitely, yeah.
and do you have any advice for people who kind of want to try to start more of these things in their own communities, in their own areas? What would you tell people who think, well, oh, well, that's all well and great if I live in Central Texas, but I live in Missouri or or Delaware, and what do I do for there? Like, how do you have any kind of advice that you would give to those people who either don't know where to find the community or how to organize one? How do I you set about doing that?
I hear you on that. I do have some suggestions. First, run a game you love and run a game you know, and make it be a game that within 15 to 20 minutes, somebody who's never been involved with a war game can understand the basics and start playing by themselves.
Hmm.
From that point on, then it becomes, once you get out of the rules and they start thinking of the flavor or the event or the cinematography or how it looks, once they go beyond the mechanic and are able to start putting themselves in the place of that corporal, that sergeant, that captain, that major, whatever else, at that point, you have a person who has learned something. And typically, when people learn something, they get excited.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking to do. You want them to be excited for themselves that they learned something.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, I actually I couldn't have put that better, and that's something that I think that both as players we got to keep in mind, and maybe if there's some company execs listening to this too, keep in mind
Yeah.
too, but to capture that kind of that spirit of imagination that I loved how you said, your first forays into wargaming were with little toy soldiers, little plastic soldiers by the hundreds, and that's kind of that capturing that kind of level of imagination is what, again, what wargaming really does. And if you can have a game that does that, and you can teach people in that way, I think you really just you not just you're not only occupying a couple hours of having fun, you're really creating a lasting thing in people's minds.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
So, well, let's, oh man, it's one of those things we're definitely going to have you back on because I've got about, we try to keep it organized here on the podcast, but I've got like 5 other questions that I'm resisting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
keeps
Exactly.
branching off to every.
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
I had that question come up, and it's like I
yeah.
felt like I had to ask that.
Yeah.
I was not
No,
playing
no,
there.
it's and but well, like I said, we'll but okay, because I actually want to learn about Pike and Shot. Like you're mentioning some other games, but for now, let's talk about the game that Net Epic Armageddon. So you let's talk a little bit about Epic Net Armageddon. Now, I had seen an advertisement on a local gaming store just hey, they're running this event. I came up and I was just blown away by like your armies, um, and just I had always wanted to play Epic. I didn't get a chance to play that day, but I actually played later on and I loved the game. And it's funny you're hitting on that point where really, Steve, who I played with, 15 minutes of just sort of teaching me things. I I got the game like within one turn. I was like, oh, this is I got it, really. I mean, there was a few things in when firefight and close combat that was okay, it was
Right.
a little more, but the basics were just like, and I was really amazed how I've always seen Epic as a kid, and I was like, the game looks cool. I don't know how complicated it is. So it's great to see a great looking game and a great mechanical game. So tell us a little bit. You mentioned it earlier about Epic Net Armageddon. How did that become a community-driven game? A little history and how that sort of developed.
Well, okay. I can go all the way back to when the very first Epic came out. Yes, I'm that old. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
mean, yeah.
but I when Epic first came out, I had played 40K, and it was like, yeah, okay, this is sort of a squad skirmish kind of thing. But the lore was about these huge armies. And then Epic came out. And that's was like, oh yes. All right. This I understand. I will tell you right now, I am not a skirmish gamer. If you see me playing a skirmish game, you want me as an opponent because you're going to run over me. I cannot do skirmish gaming. I am not a sergeant. Even though I was an NCO in the Navy and stuff, I don't have that mindset. My mindset is at a higher level of command. And in Epic, you are playing the regimental commander, if you will. So you are not commanding a squad. You're not commanding a couple of squads. You are commanding like the whole fracking, you may be the whole fracking wing of an entire planetary assault or defense. So you have to think of it in that way. You're correct, Dan. And one of the things I love about Net Epic is that it's a fan based rule set of the original set. They have tweaked it down for some of the mechanics to make it a lot easier. Uh, the easiest way I could explain that is in the original Epic 40K. If you hit a Titan you're not only rolling to see if the Titan armor saves, it's like, where did you hit it?
Mhm.
Where did you hit the Titan? And what is the armor in that area of the Titan? And then did you get through that? Okay, then what can be affected in that
On the
area of the
table.
Titan?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So that's Epic 40K and Net Epic. But Net Epic Armageddon has taken that to just say, nope, okay, your Titan has so many hit points.
Yeah.
Okay. And they just streamlined that. So same thing for your super heavy vehicles, like the super heavy tanks, Bane Blades, Satyr swords. I don't know what they call them for the Eldar or anybody else, but I'm my favorite army is Imperial Guard, so I come from that in that mindset. Leviathans, both Imperial Guard and the Space Marines might have that, but everything is really simplified. You have X amount of hit points. If it gets through your shields, all right, you can take this many wounds. After that, it's like a character in 40K. Once those wounds are gone, you die. The difference between 40K and Epic is that if they get through your shields and they actually do a hit on a super heavy something, there's a chance you're going to explode in a nuclear meltdown. And
Yeah. Yeah.
lots of folks around you are going to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. And it plays as you have seen, and I watched your video that you put out on that, and which was great. And it's true. It's like the blast markers and everything else. It's a very quick and easy mechanic. Once you learn that, it's a very fast system to get through combat. For those who want a really crunchy part of the rules, every army has its own crunchiness. It has its own little special rules, like it can do, commissars. Let's just use commissars for. They can help keep your unit together, and they're wonderful in close combat. But they're typically not going to go around and whacking off, entire squads or anything else now. It's just been more simplified in that Epic Armageddon. And as I've gotten older, I need it a little simpler. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Well,
Oh,
I just do.
it's not just you. Some of the games, I think some game companies feel like if they don't have like like you have to roll on a hit table to see where you hit, and if you hit that, did it damage this part of of it or this part of it? I think some companies feel like if they don't have that, people are gonna like lose interest, and I really don't see that. I think if you have a simple rule system that's uh simple but has depth to it is what people really want. I in my
Yeah,
mind.
that level detail slows the game down. In other words,
Yeah.
now you have to stop and you have to go through like not one, not two, not three, but typically 4 or 5 die rolls before you figured out whether this is done.
yeah.
Yeah,
Net,
and
net
that takes time. Like
it takes time, right? Because you got
that
to
means
figure
you
out
can't.
how many dice do I roll? What do they need to hit? Net Epic Armageddon, the maximum you're going to be rolling is 3 times. Absolutely, roll a hit. You know, do I save and do I blow up? That's it.
Yeah. I won't. So yeah, and I agree the mechanics. You also hit on something that I didn't realize why I liked so much about Epic, but you said it, and it's like, yeah, you're right. And that is the lore of Epic of 40K is so grandiose. It's
Yes.
so, I mean, like everything about it, and that's what's so great about it in fantasy too, but especially 40K,
Yeah,
just
let's
over the top. Just
let's drop 20 million people on this planet to try and take it or something or
and
something
Epic.
insane,
But you're right. Epic actually fits the lore better than like a 40K, right? Where,
Absolutely.
yeah, it really, now that you said it's so true, it's like it fits it. Because that's what I was playing. I had remembered that lore, and when I played that game, I'm like, yes, I'm feeling the thing here. Now you mentioned your favorite faction, Imperial Guard. why Imperial Guard? What sort of draws you to Imperial Guard?
Initially, Imperial Guard was the army that everybody loved to run over because it just doesn't move very fast. In that Epic Armageddon, it's a little better. But I have this thing about I love the idea that hundreds of guardsmen are going to be shooting at your Titan and trying to bring down its shields, or hundreds of guardmen are going to be shooting at your Gargant that's coming across, or your super heavy tank, or your wave serpent, or whatever else. And yes, the majority of them are going to miss. But when I'm rolling a bucket full of dice, there's a slight chance that one little guy from Bohoken 3 who has never been anywhere before in his life, he hasn't even had a drink yet. His las gun goes right through the small half a centimeter slit right into the Great Gargant, goes to the core and just blows it apart. I love that possibility.
Oh, that's awesome. I never thought of it like that. Wow.
Uh,
Oh man. And
Also, they get lots and lots of artillery and tanks, so that's good.
well, and we wish, Boz, our other guy, he's an Imperial Guard player, and he said something very similar that there is something about Imperial Guard that it's the man. All these crazy things are going on in this world. Imperial Guard, it's just a guy in Alaska.
You've got like chaos gods and demons, base these immortal space elves and old, and base, the tier whatever the Tyranids are, just the big devouring swarm. And then you've got you've got like the superhumans, in the Space Marines, but then you've also got, you've got your guardsmen, your rank and flank. And conscripted straight from Bohoken 3, give it like a couple weeks of rifle training. Time to serve out your life in the guard.
Most people are like, their glory, and the thing we love about wargamers is when we get to talk about our great accomplishments or whatever our great losses. For me, my greatest and glorious Imperial Guard moment was I had an Imperial Guard unit charge an orc warband and beat them in hand to hand. Now, I only beat them by 2, and I immediately died right afterwards because anything and everything that could shoot at me just blew me out of the way. But for that moment, I chased off an orc warband with a war boss, and I was like, yes, okay, my day is done.
And it's so cinematic of the 40K universe where it's like, we won, and then
this should be remembered for the rest of their lives as heroes, however short those lives may be.
Yes, it was the great red mist afterward, as where we used to be. But
we'll time box this. Alan, we got one more question for you. If time and money were not a factor, what is your dream wargaming experience? Like, just grandiose.
The most grandiose experience. Now, Dan, you've only met me playing Epic, and I haven't met Sam in person. And I played a lot of different scales, but 6mm is my love. I have fallen in love with that scale because you can typically pick on a tabletop huge battles, the whole battle, not just, okay, let's think about Gettysburg. You're not just doing Little Round Top, or you're not just doing the charge at the angle. You're doing the whole thing. So you got Culp's Hill, you've got Pickett's Charge, you got Little Round Top, you have everything. That's what I love about 6mm. You can do that in 6mm. I'm sorry, I don't live in a warehouse. I don't have a gaming table that's 35 feet long by 14 feet wide, with ladders that I can push troops across the board. 6 mil fulfills that for me. So my dream war game experience would be going to attend the Joy of Sticks convention in the United Kingdom, which they do every year. And it's typically, Bacchus Miniatures is one of the big supporters and for that. And if you don't know who Bacchus Miniatures are, they are some of the best 6mm miniatures you will ever want to see. Now, that said, and for some reason I can't get across the pond, I would love to play completely a Napoleonic campaign. I don't mean from, when Napoleon first came to power, whatever. Let's do 1806. Let's do 1809. Let's do the Italian portion. Let's do 1813. Let's do 1812, 1815, 1814. I don't care. But I'd like to play one to completion. I have been close. I've been so close. We have played like 3, 4, 5 turns, and we're like, okay, we only need another couple of weeks and we're done. And we can't get it done.
The eternal struggle of getting like a bunch of guys to get their schedules aligned and play games.
Right. Now, that said, I am trying and I am working on scenario rules to do Epic Armageddon at Armageddon, Orcs, Imperial Guard, whatever you want to play.
Oh, man.
Eldar. I am working on a scenario to do that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And we're going to play that. We're going to try it here in Texas. But, and the way that I've learned is that you have to keep it to about 6 turns maximum. Because after that, people's lives and everything else take it. So we're going to try to do 6 turns where things are going to happen as folks slowly get closer and closer to the hive city of, either Hell's Reach or something. And it's going to be orcs versus orcs and Xenos, versus Imperium and whoever wants to support the Imperium or whatever.
That sounds cool. And oh man, well, I would love to ask you a dozen more questions to talk. Unfortunately, we've all got real life. But Alan, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. We're definitely going to have you back on and continue to just pick your brain about stuff.
We could
be delighted.
I'd love to nerd out about some Napoleonic War stuff at some point.
I'm trying not to open up that can of worms.
Oh boy,
so
I was resisting to.
I am so trying not to.
Hey, let's talk offline because I am coming back down to Austin here very shortly. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, Sam, any last words?
I don't think so. Other than our little catchphrase, right? Go where the game is good.
Go where the game's good. All right. Well, we'll give the last word to you, Ellen.
If anybody would like to find us on Facebook, it's the Heart of Texas Wargamers. It is a private group to cut out the spammers and stuff, but you can find us there. Also for Dead War Game Society, I don't run that particular group, but it's a great group out of Austin. I think they are a private group now also, but you can find them on Facebook. And another group, if you're looking for any type of historical gaming in the state of Texas, I would suggest the Lone Star Historical Miniatures, which is a public group on Facebook.
Wow. Thanks so much, Alan. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Any war game, anytime.